Okay, good afternoon, everybody. This is Peter Mullen here from American Consumer Credit Counseling. So today's session is about increasing your net worth. Had a lot of great questions from folks on this one. So first off, I want to welcome you to our seminar. My name again is Peter Mullen from American Consumer Credit Counseling, and we are a nonprofit. We're just turning 30 years old last month, and we are in the great business, which I love, colleagues love, of providing free financial education, not just in the state of Massachusetts or New England area, but not really all over the United States, because of this whole great thing having to do with virtual Zoom type calls like this GoToWebinar. So that's been a positive thing out of the whole COVID mess. What we do is we provide counseling, both personal counseling, bankruptcy counseling, even reverse mortgage counseling, as well as we do have programs having to do with unsecured debt. It's called debt management planning. So if anyone does want to learn more about that, I will have some numbers and context at the end. But really, our focus today is in talking about increasing your net worth. Had about 12 states of folks who have signed on today, about more than a dozen folks, which is great. And I want to say that we always do 2 webinars every month. And this one today, as well as one coming up on October 28th, right before Halloween. It's going to be called Battling Your Money Monsters, which of course there's many. So we want to ensure that people hear and see about that. Already people are registered for that. It's great. So today you're right now in a listen-only mode. And the way that this will work is I will periodically stop throughout our sessions and ask for you to write in any questions or thoughts you might have. My colleague Maddie is helping me right now, and so she is here to help with any type of questions that you might have today. So please feel free to send them in when we open it up for that. All right. So I think we're all good to go. All right, so great. All right, so let's get on with our session. Today's goals, what we have for today, what we are looking to focus on today. We received some good questions, like I said, about 15 so questions from folks. It was great. 12 states. Basically, it came in 2 categories: asking us a lot about investing and asking what to do when people have very little money. How do you increase your net worth? But we're going to do what we can to give you tips on both. And so we will again open it up to questions. If we haven't provided the answers to them, please help us to know what might be on your mind. So the goals we have today is largely to understand net worth as one of the key measures of your financial health. Now, certainly there's other ones, but the way I like to quickly think about it is very much like when you go to the doctor, you get your temperature, and that tells them a lot. Just one measurement, or your weight, or your blood pressure. Just a single number can tell you an awful lot about the health of that person.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Your audio keeps going in and out.
But I think personally, as a long-time financial counselor, that I believe even you're getting your overall net worth is probably even more valuable than getting your total value. But I believe this one has more weight to it because it's more comprehensive. All right, so let me move on to our goal that we have. Start now. The agenda that we have is talking about net worth, and really it's all wrapped up into one number, but it really in fact is a good way to think about your health. I also want to talk about what activities erode your net worth. When you think about what are the things, and that's the starting point for a lot of folks. How do I get rid of the negative things that keep someone away? Then want to move on to how do we build and grow our assets? What are the things that give us the plus side of this? Overall, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about investments. I'm calling it an investment mindset. And for me, that's just because of the fact that we as a nonprofit generally aren't providing, just so you know, we aren't providing investment management or investment advisor advice, but I'll tell you certainly how to at least approach your investments. And then the daily trajectory. We want to talk about things there that, again, we think that will help kind of point you in the right direction. And this is all to help you, I think, in overall to gain strength in your network. One way to think about this is the starting point for all. I think this is kind of nice. I like this simple way to break our way. In its simplicity, what is net worth? Net worth is the situation where we look at what you own versus what you owe. And you have to think about what those mean. I mean, there's certain things that fall under them. But in the end, positive net worth is when you have ownership of things that have value, financial value, and they are greater than the things that you own, that you owe to somebody of financial debt or financial worth that you owe to somebody else. What we all want and what we're all looking for is we're looking for the situation where what we own is greater than what we owe. So that's the direction I hope everyone's heading in. It's trying to accumulate things that are of financial value of one source or another. I'm not talking about just stuff. I'm not talking about just cluttering your house and filling with all kinds of things. It's being selective. So the net worth is certain types of assets we'll talk about. Overall, they're called assets. Minus the liabilities in which you owe somebody else, some type of obligation or debt or taxes. And in the end, you're hoping this is all in the plus. That's what this session is about today, trying for you to understand what those minuses are that you might owe. How do we get rid of them? What are the pluses that you own? How do we increase and get more of them? So that's really what today's session is about. The things of value are those things that, I'll give you some names up front, they're things that are marketable, things that appreciate in value, things that have a certain market value. Those are what we want to own more of. When we think about debts or obligations, that might be debts or loans, or child support. These are things that are, in fact, take away some of our assets. And so when in the end, the way I like to think of it is, again, I use a couple of analogies to start. Think of it as net worth, the clarity of one number. That's what the beauty of today's session is about, in the sense that in the end, you all get to be able to monitor how your health is doing. Right? Like a thermometer measures heat, but it's only measuring a couple things all at the same time. We'll show you that as an example. Your net worth is one number, but in fact, it tells you a lot about your overall health. So thinking about heat for a second, think of the pluses. Well, how do you increase the heat? Well, we know there's a bunch of ways to do that. And that's the good thing. There's lots of different ways, you can do that. Use your house and use the thermometer registers that. There's also things that take away the heat, bring in the cold. And so how do you decrease those things, the cold side of things? Well, some obvious ones. Shut the windows, the walls, fill the holes and cracks. These are things that they both together, when you look at them, they're what register in simply one temperature. So 68 degrees, it's a combination of all the heat that you've added in the house and hopefully all the cold you've shut out. If you saw the thermometer going down, then either it's one or the other or both. Maybe someone's opened the door and forgot about it. So that's why your heat's going down. Or somebody, forgot to close a window from last night when the air was good. So those can be decreasing your overall, heat in this example. And that's why I bring this up, because when you start to think about net worth, a lot of folks who wrote in before in the registration asked about, what can I do when I have very little money? Well, the starting point is very much like this. Get rid of the negative things first that take away from your net assets. And that's what we want, or your net worth. That's what we want. And then work very hard on how do I increase the net worth of the assets that I have. So that's kind of it. And that's where we're going to go from here. So let me start on this, and now open it up to any questions that you might have after I go through this slide. So kind of let me introduce you to some things. There's a lot here. I'm going to answer some of your questions, and I want to open it up to any more questions that you might have. Right? So here's 5 tips as to how we begin to lower the bad things, the negative things. This is how we start by increasing our net worth, is by getting rid of the drains, those things that drain our money away. Now, here's the way I think about it as an investment. But as a counselor, most people have control over most of these things. So this is where you can start. You can slow down or stop the spending. Slow down the borrowing. Get rid of the negative. Try to change some of your lifestyle choices. So let's start with the very first one at the very top. Eliminating high interest debts first. So let me first start by saying I want to give credit to Trent Ham. I often cite his name. He's a great guy who a lot of this is based on today. So please take note of that name, Trent Ham, H-A-M-M. Starting point to get rid of the bad stuff. Eliminating any high interest debts that are greater than 8%. Why 8%? Because as a general rule on the investment side, from what you can gain, it's very hard for anybody, unless you're a super genius like Bill Gates or Warren Buffett. Even a good, strong stock market only generally uses about 8% to 10% overall. So therefore, if you have a credit card, as an example, with an interest rate of 20% or 25%, the best use of $1,000 that you have right now is not to stick that in the bank and get 0.5% rate. It's to pay off that $1,000 toward your credit card. You're killing a 20% or 25% drainage of your money. This is killing you. It's like having that window open. It's letting all the heat out. Close the window. First thing, close the window. Get it, stop that money from leaking out the door. There's no investments that can beat this. So your first job to start increasing your net, to increase your net worth and to be able to increase this for yourself, is to get rid of the negative. Second thing, begin to expose and reduce the expenses. So what we mean by this is start taking a solid look at where your money is going each day, on a daily basis. So, and through what we call a budget. If you haven't done a budget yet, then you really haven't done the foundational action which you need to do to help you to begin to build up your net worth. So let me give you a great example of this. It's something that I came across, and just as an idea, try this for 1 month. Every single time you pay an expense, put $1 in a jar, or put a quarter, whatever you can afford, or a nickel in a jar. Every single time you pay an expense in the month, I don't care how you pay it, credit card or cash, but put a nickel in a jar or $1 in a jar. And what the point of that is, it's going to raise your awareness. Every single time you spend money out, you have to pay yourself a little tax to yourself. What you're going to end up with at the end of the month is that jar full of dollars or full of nickels, full of quarters, whatever it is you're doing. The good news is that's your money. But what has it done for you? It's helped you be aware of how much money you're spending and where you're spending your money on. So I want you to raise your awareness, whatever works for you to be aware of the fact that money is leaving you and you need to know about it. That's what a budget does. If you're not doing a budget, this is probably the next best thing. Third thing I have here from some of the sources I've read, again, Trent Ham and many others, avoid idle cash. If you have cash sitting somewhere in your house, just sitting in a coffee can or under the mattress or wherever, in a sense, you are losing money through inflation. So you want to eliminate that drain. You want to put it someplace, put it to work somewhere. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the investments a little later on, but money should all be put at least in an interest-bearing account, if nothing else, that raises maybe 0.5%. Don't forget what I said on number 1. If you have high debts first, get rid of them. And by all means, coming down to how to invest comes a little later. But between inflation or opportunity loss, you have $5,000 in a box that money could be put to yet better use. And we want to make sure that you have done that. Okay, so number 4, one of the biggest, well, I don't know how else to say it, one of the biggest taxes on what we face is taxes. We want to do what you can to delay or defer taxes. So again, for folks that said, I really don't know what to do, well, you do have some say, whether you believe it or not, in when some taxes hit you. So some examples, let me give you a couple examples. One is retirement. A lot of you probably know about that. And that is such things as when you have a 401k, you can avoid taxes, or an IRA. You can avoid taxes this year by putting some of that money into an IRA or more into your 401k, which is basically retirement plans, and thus reduce your monthly income that you're getting, your annual income, and so you have less taxes paid out this year. So that's one way to basically reduce now and pay later. You do have to pay later, but if you pay in 10 or 20 or 30 years from now, you're paying at a point where you're in a lower tax bracket, and you're paying back money that's worth less than it's worth today. So it's hopefully a win-win situation. Try to recognize in everything you do, just be aware of the tax implications and do what you can to defer or delay it. Again, I can't give you all the examples, but that's one. The second one I give you is this, and this is I hear a lot in classes that I do. Recognize that you have a W-4, which you fill out every year, and you declare to your place that you work at how much you actually want taken out of your paycheck. Well, you have two choices with that. Again, this is just between you and your business. It's not between you and the tax man. You can tell your business to please, you claim more dependents now, real or not. This is not illegal. You can claim more dependents now and then have more money in your pocket. They will take out less taxes. So if you're somebody who can manage your own money that you get in your paycheck each month, and you want more in your pocket, and you want to make decisions along the year, claim more dependents. What that means is when you hit April, though, you may get nothing in return, or you may have to pay the tax man. Okay, so that's one strategy. I'm not telling you what's right or wrong. The second one is you claim less dependents now. And by doing that, you will have less money in your pocket month to month or paycheck to paycheck, but in a sense, it's a forced savings plan for you. Some people tell me all the time, this is the way they like to do it. You're basically giving the government your money over that year, but then you'll get more of a windfall come April when you file your taxes. The bottom line is you can manipulate the system to work with the way that you like to manage your own money. Have them take it out now or later based on what management strategy you like. You want more in your pocket today, or do you want more in your pocket come April as a lump sum? You decide. Our goal as counselors is not to tell you what to do, but to tell you what your options are. The last one I want to bring up to you, and again, I credit this one to Trent Ham, is this whole idea of control your lifestyle inflation. And what that simply means is this: you can't control regular inflation, out of our control. But if you get a raise, or if you get a bonus, or if you find some extra money start to come to you because of something within your work, don't start increasing your expenses to match your wages you just received. That's called lifestyle inflation. If I start to make $1,000 more in a month, don't start living up a richer lifestyle to spend that $1,000. I should take advantage of that extra money and put that into a savings account, or put that into some other account, which again may be an investment, which we're going to get to in a while. So again, don't keep on raising your lifestyle of buying more stuff simply because you've got more money in your account. You're never going to get ahead if you're always paying out that money and not putting some aside. The secret of millionaires is they do put money aside. So I'm going to open this up now to questions, Maddie. I'm going to ask if there's any questions that people have. Okay, so let me just see. what we have for questions. What questions do you have? I think this opens up your dialogue and allows you to get some Nadia, please. I'm gonna wait for a next second and see what people say. Does it sound kind of creepy? Is it kind of difficult? Is that what some people are saying? I'm gonna try something. See if this works better. Tell me if it sounds any better right now.
Can someone tell me if the sound changed at all? Any better or any questions coming through? All right, I'm not seeing any questions. Maddie, are there any more? Or is the sound, how's the sound over there for folks? We also need to stop moving the mouse around so much. There was a complaint. Okay, all right, I'll try and keep my mouse still. All right, what else? Any other questions coming through? I can ask some questions that have come through to me then. I'll wait for them, some more from you guys, but let me just ask a few that did come into me, which I want to make sure that I got to. Of the 12 states coming in, one of them asked me this. Does negotiating, and this is from New Jersey, does negotiating or asking for a modification of your interest rate on a high interest rate credit card affect your credit? No, it does not. That's a great thing to do, as a matter of fact. Great suggestion for folks. If you, in fact, find that your interest rates are too high, things have changed because of COVID, issues you're facing, by all means, ask. It never hurts to ask. You may find that people will, in fact, lower your rates. Okay. There are a couple questions about the tax point. How do you claim more dependents when you have? Do you mean by what do you mean by delay the tax man? What I mean is that you can, when you do your W-4 every October or November, right around this time frame, you have the ability to tell your place of work, if you're working, I'm assuming most people on this call are, if you're talking about net worth, then you have the ability to claim 2 or 3 dependents and then thus have less money taken out per paycheck. They will give you more, they will take out less taxes. And so you're delaying the taxes. Now you have to make up for it come April of the following year. This is a strategy some people like to do. If you have more money in your pocket each week with each paycheck, you decide what to do with that money. You invest it. You make decisions with it. The only challenge, the only downside is when April comes, if you in fact owe the government more money, you have to make up for that. But if you've put that in an account or set it aside, you have that money ready to make it up. So it's you managing your money. Now, some folks don't like that. A lot of folks in my classes will say they would much rather have the more taxes taken out of their paycheck so they can be assured that they'll get 2 or 3 or 4,000 come April. Again, that's a strategy. That's what I mean by that. All right, I'm going to move on for now. Hopefully that's clarified that. If not, I'll come back to it. All right, so let's go back to this and tell you a little bit about net worth. So net worth, this is kind of an interesting graphic I made up. Hopefully it makes some sense. I'm not going to focus on this too much, but I wanted this for people to think about because I think it helps to provide some insights on the overall process. So just bear with me for a quick second. Overall, in general, we all have the parental side that comes in from the left, begins to give us money of some source, helping us get through our early years. And somewhere in our teens, usually we start to pick up our own income. And that's a typical pattern, and it begins to grow and typically grows until we hit 55, 60 or so. That's generally when it maxes out. But during this time also, we have a lot of initial debts that often hit us. Now, the challenge is that a lot of them happen in our 20s and 30s. So I wanted to show you just some things to think about that, the typical things as you're moving out in your early 20s, typically. There's things like babies coming along, which sometimes these things you're clear when they're going to happen, sometimes not. Sometimes people get married along somewhere in this time frame. The point here is that some of these things, they all cost a typical amount of money. Baby, $234,000 to raise a kid from 0 to 18. Typical weddings, and these are just national figures, so they're all averaged out. $34,000 to go to college, if that's what you choose. Average $22,000, and a house average, again, much greater here in the Boston area, that's for sure, $340,000. The challenge for a lot of folks when we think of the discussion of net worth is that a lot of them come at the same time. Some in our control, some out of our control. Like I noted this, COVID, costs, and kids sometimes have a way of showing up at times, maybe obviously when we can't control. So it gives some people a negative net worth. I want people to realize that's not necessarily an unexpected thing when you're young, because you start out with so many things that you're managing. But here's the good news. So let's go to the positive, the glass half full. As you begin to get a little bit older, a lot of these debts begin to fall off or begin to fall aside. So it's not uncommon for you to move into the black, into the plus of your net worth. So typically what's happening, and again, I only can talk in terms of typical things now, right? Generalities. Most people's debts begin to go down. Most people's incomes begin to go up. Kids generally begin to move up and out of the house. Some of your, then you begin to hopefully get to a point your house is paid off. And then if you had that situation earlier where you begin to make some bonuses or raises, then I would say to you, just that's what we call lifestyle inflation. Just try to keep your costs as much as possible, your expenses as much as possible level, and then begin to save as what you can on that difference. So again, that's all the point of this particular slide was, trying to give you some generalities and hopefully some positive thought that you're heading in the right direction on your net worth. I'm going to go to this slide and then open it up for any questions that people might have. So on the opposite side, we talked about heat. I talked about the thermometer, right? How do you increase the heat in your house? Well, it's either increasing the heat or helping to turn off the cold. This is us turning up the heat now. How can we begin to make things that actually increase the plus side of your net net income, right? Number one, work hard to maximize your personal income. This is your job. So again, the investment advice that I've seen and the management advice is obviously try to give your work everything you can. Put your most into that so that you can become a top performer. That will help you hopefully to gain more access and more opportunities there within your own job. Volunteer to expand, to learn more. Opens up opportunities over time. So your job is obviously the first place for you to begin to help to maximize and hopefully begin to gain more money on that side. One of the, again, small advantages of this whole world in which we all now have so many virtual access is it's opened up a gig economy too. So Zoom connections and multiple jobs at home and work from home. My wife, as an example, has started this thing. A lot of people do this. It's called Poshmark, where basically you're reselling things that come from from like low cost type of yard sales and things like this. There's a whole market for selling things online. So it's just an amazing thing. So certainly take advantage to maximize your income. Number two, take advantage of retirement free money. Again, now we're back to the 401k and any type of matching. If you know that your employer has any type of matching money, meaning if you put in 6%, they'll match it with 3%, it would be a crime to leave that free money on the table. Again, it's up to you in terms of what you give, but many employers do that. And if they don't do it in terms of 401k, many of them have lots of benefits. that I would encourage you to explore. Find out places where you can buy things at a cheaper rate or at a bulk rate because of the employer. Some of them have health savings accounts, which work almost like 401k, where they might match you. There's just lots of things to explore there, and please don't leave anything on the table. Turning the heat up on your assets means doing and looking and asking questions and finding the things that work for you. Number 3, this very quick concept of distinguish an asset from a liability. A very great case in point is people will think, for instance, and I've learned this from other webinars that I've done here with you guys, is that they think getting a brand new car is an example of an asset. Well, the reality is a brand new car, for the most part, is very quickly turns into a liability. The value of a car, just as a quick, using that as a reference, it really does drop anywhere between 10 and 20% as soon as you drive that off the lot. The first minute it's driven off the lot. Now, it depends on the car, so I'm talking in general again. So it's not the kind of thing you want to have a whole fleet of cars unless they're antiques, like Jay Leno or something. But then cars lose their value of anywhere from 15 to 25% a year after that. Again, depends on the car. The point I'm only trying to make here is that that's not an asset. It's something that doesn't grow in value and grow in market value, unless, again, it's a very rare type of MG from 1964 or something like that, or a Corvette or something. So again, just be wise in what you put your money into. The fourth thing I have there, and again, this is when you've begun to take care of these things above, when you've paid off some of your debts, when you've begun to build up more money, you're ready for number 4. What I suggest to a lot of folks who I see in lots of different classes and things that I work with and work on, they want to know, even though they are right now making very little money, the very first question is, how do I invest in Bitcoin or something? Well, number one, as a counselor, we're not here to give you hot tips, and we don't know them. That's not the business we're in. We are in the business to try to help you maximize the money you do have, and certainly not to be risking money when you don't have enough money to pay for the basics. So investment comes in due time. Is it needed? Yes, it's absolutely needed in this equation. But it comes when the time is right. And when the time is right, when you're debt-free and really have some freedom with your money, for those on the line, that's a good time for you to really look into and start investigating what is the way that you can begin to use your money to get a return on your money. So what can I do for you here? What can I tell you here? These are some tips that come from, again, what I've read. And these are generalities on purpose. I'm not here to tell you specifics. Investments that return income. There are many of them. Anything that gives you dividends as a return, or gives you some type of interest, or even if you buy like an investment property where you get rent, those are investments that return income. The tip that I've heard and read is reinvest it. Don't take the money and run. Don't get the rent from the renters you have in the apartments that have 3 renters. Take that money and put that back into either more property or other things that are going to yield more pay back to you. It allows you to buy more. So you're taking the money and not spending it on things that aren't going to, in fact, gain you something. Number 2, invest and hold is a strategy. If you hold things for a certain period of time, known as long term, and again, it depends on the assets, but if you hold it for a year or more, 2 years, you have to look this up. But once you do that, the capital gains you spend will be less. So there's a timing strategy in what you buy in for your investments. And the third one is this one, and I get this one courtesy of our friend Warren Buffett. There's some things that they say invest and hold forever. If it's a great asset, and I guess the example that I read was Coca-Cola. And I'm not here to tell you, by the way, go out and buy Coca-Cola. I'm just giving you an example that Warren Buffett has suggested that's strong, gives you great dividends. It's the kind of thing that you might want to buy and hold because it has a great return. So overall, our job here is to try and push you or advise you toward things that you might want to look into. And I suggest that everyone on this line, even whatever we've said, you check out for yourself. So I'm going to ask now again, if I can get to this point here again, at Maddie, if there's any more questions coming in. And please send some along if I haven't answered them. All right, let me see. I think I see one here. All right. Okay. Okay, if you have a credit card, which is the best one in terms of interest rate and cashback rewards? Again, I wouldn't answer, like I just said, which one's the best one. We wouldn't do that. We would say to you, your role is to do some research on your end. The fact is there are a lot of good rates out there and rewards, but I would say also be very wary of rewards, just as a general statement. If they're paying you more money in rewards, you got to ask yourself, what else are they doing? How are they making that money up? There is no credit card company that is going to lose money on their credit cards. They're just not going to. They're going to find some way to make that up. So either it's in penalties, annual rates, annual fees, maybe in a lowered interest rate. If they're paying you money on the side, you got to ask yourself, what are they not doing? Or how are they potentially charging me for that? So the only strategy I know of as a manager is this. There's one surefire strategy you do have with credit cards. If you work to pay them down, and as soon as you use them, take a float of the money throughout the month, and then pay off your balance before the next payment due. You will have gained the float of the money, you will have not paid interest, and then you will in fact increase your credit rating because you are paying on time and keeping your debt low. That is one of the greatest benefits I know in working with credit cards. So I'm going to move on. Not seeing another question yet, Maddie, unless you see one. I want to talk a little bit about what I've called about investment mindset. And for us, again, I've said to you before, we're not in the business of trying to point you out to investments, but I will certainly tell you the kind of the ways to think about them. I won't tell you what to buy, but I will certainly try to provide you with ideas on what you should think about as you buy and what to ask, what to look for, what to avoid, how to weigh your risks and costs versus returns. So here you see a diagram right now of the way typically all investments are portrayed. It's always risk versus return. What am I getting versus what am I risking? And as I go up this spectrum, again, I'm not saying for you what to buy or not, but obviously there's a relationship. The more you're willing to risk, the higher you're willing to risk money, it means that you might have a greater return. It's not guaranteed. So your decision as someone who's starting to invest is to start to think about and look for those investments with as little a risk as possible, but a great return. You and everyone else is looking for the same thing. So your mission is to try to recognize that. But let me point out some things over here, which I've called the drag over here. And the drag for me is these things such as your basis points, your fees, and your taxes, and your inflation. So as you are doing your research and looking for investments that fit this best strategy, don't forget these others, which I look like small things, but they're not. So let me point out one thing I can point out as a counselor. There's this thing here that says fees. Now, what most organizations who do investments will call them are basis points. Now, it's funny that they're not straight out with us to tell us what they are. If they say that this managing your portfolio costs 100 basis points, that's another way of saying it costs you 1% of your portfolio. So if I have $10,000 in my portfolio and they're going to charge me 100 basis points, they're going to take 1% of my portfolio as their cost for doing business. That would be what, $100. But they don't say they're going to take 1%. They'll say they're going to take 100 basis points. So this is what I can say to everybody on the line. If you have an investment advisor you go to who's charging you around 150 basis points, that's high. That's 1.5% of your portfolio. If you have another investment advisor who charges you anywhere between 50 to 75 basis points, that's less than 1%, then that's good. So that's the kind of thing you'd want to be looking for. I can't tell you which investment to go to, but I can tell you what to look for in terms of the kinds of costs that you're dealing with. All right, investment and mindset, still continuing. For here, I want you to think about, for those that are thinking all about here, net worth as a goal or as a target, here's one way to use this strategy. Going from back to front. So here with a net worth as a goal, this is one way you can begin to use this strategy. So let's say, for example, those on the line wanted to say, I want to get to a certain amount. Well, how do you do that? I want to get to a certain amount when I retire. So some of this math, and by the way, you all will have these slides when we're done. I forgot to say that at the beginning. These slides will all be yours. The tape of this will be yours, and an evaluation will be yours at the end. So we'll give you all that. But what this gives you an example of is, how would I know how to get to this certain figure? Well, you have to do some calculations up front. If you're making $50,000 a year, as an example, and you want to spend $45,000 up until your age of 70, you basically want to plan, use this figure of 3.5% as the amount that you're looking to spend. So how do I arrive at that figure? You take the amount that you want to spend, $45,000, and divide it by that 3.5% figure. It will help you arrive at what you need to have at that age 70 to be able to get to have that amount to spend. So you're backing your way into a future number. Well, why do we care about this? Because then you see below, according to how old you are on this line, how much you need to spend at age 7. If you're 20 today, you have 50 years worth of saving $2,000 a year. If you're age 30, you'll have 40 years of which you have to save $6,800 per year. If those on the line are age 40, you get the picture. You have 30 years left to save $10,000, $10,500 per year. And those who are on the line who are age 50, you have 20 years to save 50. And even that won't get you to the 1.29 million because you don't have enough years. So I guess another key little point here is, if you want to get to a certain goal, start early or else you have to save a huge amount of money. And this all goes toward not just retirement, but how you build up your net worth. So again, a lot of quick numbers, but what I am trying to make the point of is, you have the ability to plan today what you're going to do to help you get to a goal in the future. It's all part of your net worth thinking. Let's look at another example. Again, these will all be yours so you can look at the numbers yourself. What about net worth as a guide for your today's spending? So how do I manage my budget today? This is what I'm calling from front to back. So let me give you this example. Let's just say you're making $40,000 right now. Again, I just made these up. And you want to spend $32,000 or 80% at retirement. My annual savings rate is 10%. So at that rate of me now saving 10%, when will my money run out? You know, my little guy over here is thinking over here on the right, at this current savings rate, when will I run out? Well, at 10%, your money's going to run out at age 67, or I'm sorry, at age 84. You will have at age 67, 781,000. It's going to run out at age 84. Well, if this is where a lot of guesswork comes in. If you think you're going to live past 84, and I hope everyone does, you would have to start saving more money to have that $32,000 in savings ready at retirement. Let's look at another. And this is where calculators come in, by the way. I recommend folks on the line to look at bank rate retirement calendars. There's all kinds of calculators out there that help you make these decisions. I love the what ifs. You can do what ifs on things to begin to plan out, what would I have to do if I want this? So here's another one. What if I delay my retirement to age 71, not 67? Then I will have a much greater amount of money that will last me till I'm age 93, which is greater. I'm hoping to live past 93 myself. And then the last one is this, another change. What if I change the investment amount instead of from 10% to 15%? You can see you have a lot more money to spend and you will run out at age 92. Again, I don't want to get too deep into the weeds on these other than to say you have the ability to decide, you have the ability to play out the math, and all this does play into your net worth. You're making decisions today on what you spend and save that ultimately determine how you're doing on the income side and on the management of your assets. Let me give you just a few more and then we'll wrap this up, and some really nice things I think to kind of end this up with. When you're thinking about investments, and I don't want to go too deep into it, it's good to think of it this way. There's different sources of your retirement funds, which is on the left. And you can see that in general, about a little more than a fourth comes from your earnings. You're really having to do a lot more work to find between Social Security and investments and other types of plans to help you really round out what you need. So that's a little word to yourself as to what we all should be thinking of. On the right, I thought this was a really great way to look at all investments. In the end, all investments or investment vehicles that you might invest in are two types. You're either an owner of a company or a lender to a company. When you own stock, you are in fact a part owner of that company. And you are in fact then get certain benefits from that. You get, when you sell it, you get capital gains. When you hold on to that stock, you get dividends, if it's a dividend producing stock. And so those are benefits. So you got to make decisions about the tax implications of these. The third one is bonds. That's when you lend money to a company. And again, what they give you when they mature is principal, but they give you generally, again, depends on the bond, generally they give you semi-annual interest all along its life. Your mission is to decide all of this, to think once again of these kinds of things before you get into this investment world. Pay off all your high interest debts first. I've already said that to you. Number two, know your fees, also known as basis points. 100 basis points equals 1%. Three, aim for diversification. Nobody should be putting all their eggs in one basket. Nobody knows where all these are going to go. Nobody knows the direction of the stock market. We only know the general direction has been, generally speaking, a return of around 7 or 8% over its history. So if you're only gaining 7% from the stock market, you have to again get rid of those high interest rates, high interest debt first. That's robbing you of 25% or 30% on that end. So before you invest in the stock market and get an 8% return, get rid of those things that are siphoning off 20 or 25% on the other side of your ledger. Number four, we all know this one, buy low, sell high. I don't suggest that people try to play the market, but you have to decide. And number five, I've already mentioned this, but here it is again, don't ignore taxes. Because according to the tax treatment, it all comes in. It all depends on what the type of investment you bought, your age, how old you are when you're doing these things, the age of your investment. Are you keeping it for the short term and the long term? Is it in what kind of an income bracket are you in when you sell it? And then finally, are you married or not? All these things play into your investments. So that's why it's so complex and it's very, very hard for me to make a specific thing. Maddie, are there any other questions coming in? I have a couple more slides and I'm gonna wrap up. Any more questions coming in? I'm not seeing any from you. Let me just see. All right. Let me ask again. Any questions? See if there's anything else coming in. I'm not seeing any right now. Okay. What did you say about credit cards? I was just saying that you can't ignore the fact, you never can ignore the fact if you have credit cards that have a high interest rate, one of the first orders of business is to get that paid down. If their rates are 20, 25%, they are far more than what you can gain on the investment side. I don't know of any investments, unless somebody has a secret formula of how you can gain any investment that returns you, with the exception of really good timed, well-timed real estate, that's going to pay you more than 20, 25%. All right, let's go to our last couple slides, and I like this one. This one kind of brings us kind of nice way to begin to end here today on your whole idea of your net worth. And I love this. This is all again from Trent Ham. I mentioned him again, but I love this because for a lot of you people in your questions in the registration, a number you said things, for instance, like, Peter, how can I do, increase my net worth when I have no money or little money or very tight money with increasing costs? Well, this is how. In addition to reducing your debt, this is simple things from Trent Ham. Choose to skip a random spend today. When you are going to spend $5 on something, maybe even $10 or $12 on cigarettes, whatever it might be, instead of buying a couple things at Dunkin', take that $5 and do a trajectory change, which means it points you in a different direction. It turns you from a spender to a saver and starts you in a different path. Look at number 2, review a bill in detail, make a change, ask to have the excess charges removed going forward, and then add that to savings. Buy store brands starting this week of products that you'd normally buy in name brand form. Save a few bucks. Make a bunch of meals in advance and freeze them. Sell off some of your things in the closet or from the attic. Shop around for a better cell phone or a cable bill. By doing these small things, they add up and they're pointing you in a new direction. So here's a conclusion that he makes that I think is pretty powerful. You're not trying to get your net worth all perfect within a short time. It's a gradual life process. Every good financial move raises your net worth to some degree. And most poor financial decisions begins to drop your net worth. So everyone's mission, and I'm not saying it's easy, work with someone who is a counselor, someone like myself. What we do is for free. We can begin to point you to these types of things and start to make the decisions that move you in a positive direction and reduce the things that begin to move you in a negative direction. It's a day-by-day effort. I'm going to summarize here with folks, and I think this is some great summaries that kind of just lead us toward the end here is simply this. Calculating your net worth for those that tuned in today is a very useful exercise because it's a useful marker of your financial health. In the same way that very much like a thermometer, which I used earlier, if you quickly want to know what the temperature is and you see it's 72 in the house, you can quickly know what kind of moves you got to make to either reduce the heat or open a window to increase the cold, because you know what the effects are, what the elements are that affect it. Number 2, monitor net worth periodically to review what direction you're going. If you know that your net worth now, and I'm making this up, is $50,000 net worth when I take away all my assets and subtract my liabilities, and then next month I do my net worth and I see it's $30,000, it's gone down 20. So something's happened in my pluses and my minuses that have made it move in a direction I don't want it to go. So I need to change something. If I see it go from 50 to 100, then obviously I'm doing some things right. I'm moving it in the right direction. Number 3, plug up the debt drains, those things that take away from your net worth, and put a fire under your assets. I put that in there on purpose to help begin to heat it up and find those things that add the pluses. Invest in asset growth, income return, and yourself. Don't forget about yourself as a very important part of this equation. Sometimes education, which costs money, can help you turn around and then become a more valuable employee and thus make more money. That's an investment that has a return to it. And then finally, tilt your trajectory daily by small things in a positive direction. I think we're at the end here, Maddie. I want to see if there's any more questions that people have. Are there any more that I'm seeing here? I'm not seeing that many come through. Anything else from anybody? Nothing else. Okay, let me end with the bottom line thing here. Bottom line for everybody. If you took away nothing else, you got to spend less than you earn, and you've got to avoid lifestyle inflation. If you start making more money, don't just quickly run out and spend it. Find a way to leverage that and begin to build your net worth up with that simple thing. I'm going to point you toward the final point here, which is the references that we used. And I also want to point out our phone number, which in case anyone does have any unsecured debt or any questions, you can use our counselors, which are there, and they can answer lots of questions, or contact me if any questions came from this seminar. Appreciate you being with me, and I wish you all the best. So I'm going to sign off for now. Thank you all.